So if you want to have a go at Goldwork Embroidery and you're not sure where to start, then this video is just for you. I'm going to work this design, so this lovely little kite design here, and I'm going to work from start to finish and show you that all of the processes involved in this. We have a download design for this which you can get from the link in the description below, and you can print that off and you can copy your design onto your fabric. We also have all of the materials available in our shop if you want to have a go at that, so that's www.sarahhomfray.com, and we'll also put a link to that below as well. So let's get going. These are the materials and equipment that I'm going to use for this project. Got a light blue linen and a calico backing, some bar frames and some pins. Got some gold metals and threads, so metal pearl spangles in gilt and silver, and a rococo medium in gilt and silver also, and some mini leather squares. I'm going to use embroidery needles number 10 and some sew all thread in grey and yellow, some beeswax and some embroidery scissors. I'm also going to use this free design. You can download this from our website. I'll put it in the link below this video. So I've just transferred the design onto my linen. I've just traced through the copy from the PDF with this permanent black pen. Fixed it to my stretcher bar frames with the pins nice and tight as I can, with the calico behind the linen, nice and tight so that we can be very accurate when we work. So I'm just pinning opposite sides to pull it out to take up the tension as much as possible. These are the padding templates that you get on the free design. So I'm going to cut these out of the paper and just place them in position on my drawing, just to make sure that they're the right size at this stage. They just want to sit just inside the black design lines. I'm going to use a gold leather and a silver leather from my pack. And you'll notice how I put the template on the back of that leather. I put it behind it, then turned it over, otherwise I'll get a mirror image and it won't fit on my kite. So I'll just remove those ones out of the way and just cut one out at a time. So just reverse your paper template just to make sure you get the right side of the leather, and I'm just drawing around that again with my permanent black pen. You won't see this, so you can use anything that will show up on the leather. I'm just going to cut this as carefully as I can, just to the inside of that black line so it doesn't get any bigger. It's nice and soft, so it's very easy to cut. And just check it, put it in position, check it will fit. And you can just give it a trim if it's not quite right. So I've cut all of my pieces of leather, and I'm just going to put them all in place first, just to make sure that they fit as one piece. So I'm going to stitch my gold leather down first. So for that I'm going to use the yellow sewing thread. This is number 488, just a single thread, and I put a knot in the end to start the thread off. So I just put my knot on the top. This is called a waist knot. And I'm going to do 2 small stitches just to start the thread off. This will secure the end of the thread, and then we will cut the knot off later. And as I'm covering this area with the leather, I can just put the stitches right in the middle of this triangle. Place my leather in position. And I just want to secure it in place when I sew it down. So I'm just coming up in the corner now, so it's just inside those black design lines. Place the leather in position. I'm just going to catch the corner of the leather. Now the needle goes straight down through the leather, just enough to grab hold of it, not too much because you don't want to see all of the stitches, but just enough to hold that leather in place. So I'm just going to tack down all of the corners first. So just coming up in the linen and then stab down through that leather. Just make one mark, because it does mark if you leave a hole in it, it will show, so just take your time to do that part carefully. And then the final corner here. Again, up in the linen, stab straight down through the leather. This is a fine needle, so it won't make a very big hole. So once I've got it in position, I'm just going to stitch around the outside. So I'm just coming up in the linen and down into the leather along the edge. Now try and keep these stitches a consistent distance from each other and about the same length into the leather as well. They will show a little bit, you'll be able to see where it's pierced through, so do this as neatly as you can. Seeing the stitches is part of this technique, so don't worry that you can actually see them, but do try and make them as even as possible. I'm just working my way around the shape on the outside, always down into the leather, reaching that corner where I started. Just carry on around the other side, all the way around the shape like this. So last couple of stitches. Needle comes straight up and straight down. Now I'm going to work the other gold piece while I have the gold thread in the needle, so the yellow thread for the gold in the needle. So I'm just passing it down. I've just done a little stitch there to carry the thread down, and I'm bringing it up again in the corner. Place my second piece in position. This just means I don't have a long thread on the back, and just keeps it nice and neat and tidy. So again, just going to catch the corner. This does stretch a little bit, so you can mould it into shape if you need to. If you need to just pull it over to keep it nice and tight, you can do that with this leather. Now this is a slightly bigger piece, so rather than jumping straight down to the other corner, that's quite a long stitch on the back, I'm going to step my way down. So I'm just positioning that leather in the right place, and I'm taking a stitch halfway down either side, just so I don't have great big long stitches on the back which could break and come undone. So just stepping my way down the shape now, just because it is that little bit larger, and then again in the point to hold it in position. I'm going to come up between those points and put a few more holding stitches in. It's still moving quite a bit, so it's quite good just to get it in position and as still as possible before you put all your smaller stitches in. Okay, so now I can work between these. Again, up on the outside, down into the leather, taking these little small stitches all the way around the shape and back to where I started. Now I'm just going to finish my thread in the middle of this shape. 2 little stitches. I'm going to change colour now, so 2 stitches back to the top. You can cut that thread off, that will hold. I'm cutting off my starting knot. Now we're going to change colour thread, so this is the grey thread to go with the silver leather. So starting as before with my waist knot on the top, my 2 little stitches to hold the end of the thread. Up in the corner, and then exactly the same as for the gold, place it in position, tap down the corners, and sew all the way around the shape. There's the final piece in position, just finishing off that side. And the last stitch. And my 2 small stitches to finish off this thread back to the top, and then I'll just cut that off. Right, we're going to apply some gold now, so I'm going to run my thread just once through the beeswax just to give it a light coating. This will just help it to slip through the fabric and just protect it from the metals in the gold threads and metals. So I'm going to put the centre bars in now. So we're going to use the silver pearl. I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment. So starting my thread off as normal. I'm actually going to make the stitch first. So here's my pearl. I'm going to prepare it ready to go in the stitch. So roughly measure how much I need in the middle, and we're going to stretch it. Just gently, it will spring back so it just hangs straight, and that just opens up the coils. And then you can see that end there has not been stretched, so just snip that off. So we've got a nice neat end to work with, and we can place that in position. And this thread that I'm stitching now will go between those coils. So I'm making a loop first, which I found is the easiest way to start it. And you can just see that thread disappear between those coils. Now just to secure it, it's a good idea to put 2 stitches in at the end. You'll be able to see this part more clearly as we go up the shape, what I'm doing with the needle. So just 2 stitches in the end there, stop that end coming up. Now this instrument here that I'm using is called a malure, and this is a laying tool, so it helps you to lay the threads accurately. And this one is specific to gold work because it has a few features. So it's got this quite pointed end on it, which helps to carefully place your thread. So you can see I'm coming up one side, actually angling my needle in a little bit. It's going over the top and slipping between the coils. Using the malure just to hold that metal in place, and then just to guide my thread down, so it's just like an extra hand really. Working every few coils to make sure that it's nice and firm, so you can see how that needle is angling in towards the pearl there. Using the malure just to guide that thread accurately into place, and just working my way up this pearl. So we're near the top, so I'm going to put 1 more stitch in. Guide that into place with the malure. Now we want to cut that pearl to length. So you can only do this once, so be accurate as you can. Take your time, lay it in position, scissors over the top and a good sharp snip. Make sure you cut it to the right length, because once it's cut we can't add any on, so take your time doing that part. And again 2 small stitches over the last few coils of the pearl, just to secure that end in place. So this all sits on the top of the fabric, none of it goes through to the back, so the wires only all sit on the top. And there's my 2 finishing stitches. Now we're going to carry on using the same thread because I've got quite a lot of it, but I put 2 stitches in between just to carry the thread down, and then if for some reason you should want to take anything out, you've only got to take it back to the last 2 stitches. So we're going to put the cross section in now, so I'm going to make my little loop first and thread the pearl into it. I found that's the easiest way to start. Just catch the end in. It's a little bit fiddly until you get the first few stitches in. So that's the second stitch over the top. Just angle that needle in a little bit just so that thread hugs the metal. Thread disappears through the gap. And again, work my way along this pearl. Now I need to cut it to length because I'm not going to go over the top, so place it in position, nice sharp snip, and just stitch these down as two separate pieces. So as we're treating them as separate pieces, treat the ends as we did before, so a couple of stitches over that last one for extra security. And then we can just jump underneath the middle one, come up the other side. And again make our first loop over the top of the pearl. It's got a bit twisted, so I can just use my malure just to turn that thread round. So a really handy little tool. Don't worry if you haven't got one, you can use your fingers, or an extra large needle will also do the similar job. So there's my second stitch over the top. I'm working my way along to the end, nice sharp snip, cut to length. You can see that's just inside the black line all the way around because we're going to put an outline around this, so we don't want it sticking out over the design line. So the last couple of stitches. You can finish the thread off. So that's leather and pearl, so that's two techniques done. Next we're going to couch some threads down. So we're going to work on the tail, so I'm going back to gold, so I'm back to my yellow thread, single thread, run it through the beeswax, just once is enough. I'm putting my starting waist knot out of the way because I'm going to stitch on the left hand tail first. So there's my two tiny stitches. I'm going to cover this black line, so I'm just putting those stitches on the line, confident that we're going to cover that with the gold. Now notice where I'm bringing my needle up. It's not right at the end, it's just in a little bit, and it's just to the right of that black line. This is the gold thread we're going to use. This is called a rococo. You can see it's got that lovely wave to it, really beautiful thread. Now this has a core thread running through the middle of it and a wire wrapped around it, so this will need to be taken through to the back of the fabric. So we're going to leave that little tail end there and take that through later, so I'll show you how to deal with that later. And we're just going to stitch over this now, that's called couching. So I'm coming up on one side and down on the other. Now at the moment it doesn't matter which side you come up on. It will change when we go around the kite, but at the minute I'm just going to come up on the left and down on the right, but you can go the other way if you like. And you can see how I'm putting every stitch over the sort of wave pattern of the thread, which is quite handy because that helps me to evenly space my stitches. So quite a good thread to use, this one, because you can put them nice and evenly. Using the malure again just to help me guide it in position. You'll notice I'm not really handling that gold thread very much, I'm just letting it lie in position. I don't want to pull on it, I don't want to damage it, so it's just lying in the direction it's going. Moving it out a little bit just so I can see where the line is, so just up on the left of the line, just down on the right. Just working my way all the way up this shape, doing exactly the same. Stitches nice and evenly spaced in the grooves of that thread. Now we're going to take this thread all the way around the kite and all the way back down the other side. So I'm just going to keep stitching now, but we want it nice and close to this leather and underneath this pearl here, so that they don't sit on top of each other. So that's why it's important that you cut the pearl so it just sits inside that black line. Now it's important which side I come up and down on, so I'm coming up on the outside of that shape, and you can see I'm taking my needle down next to the leather. So up on the outside, in the wave, in the groove of the thread, just moving it out the way, and right on the edge of that leather. When I pull it tight, it pulls it in. So needle angles out ever so slightly and in ever so slightly, and that pulls nice and close to the leather so there's no gaps. Now to get around a corner, I'm going to use the thread to help me. So I'm twisting the rococo around my thread to sort of crease it. And you can see how now it's lying in a different direction. You'll never get a really sharp point with this thread because of the wave in it, but we're going to put something else on these corners, so don't worry about that. And then just carrying on around the shape up on the outside. See, just angle that needle underneath the leather and it will pull it over nice and tight. Now, while I'm here, before I go further, I'm going to put the spangles on because I've got the right colour thread in the needle, and it will save me coming back and having to change the thread later. So I'm going to put it on while I'm here. So I'll show you all three of these, so don't worry if you can't see what I'm doing in the first one. So I've come up a little bit away from the point, and I'm just sewing this spangle down with a stitch over two sides of it. So up on the edge and down in the hole, pull it nice and tight. And then I'm going to stitch my way up to the top point, and I'm going to do the same at the top with another spangle. So you can come back and put them on later if you want, but I just found it easier just to do it while I was there and I had the right thread in the needle. So let's turn the corner again. So thread up right on that point, thread pulls away, bend the rococo round so it's in the direction that you're going to stitch in, and it sits there on its own. Needle goes down over the top. Going to put the spangle on, so I'm coming up a sort of half a diameter of the spangle away from the tip. Slide it on, sparkling beautifully there. So putting the gilt ones on first, and then we'll come back and put the silver ones on later. So this is a 3mm spangle that we're putting on here, so the diameter is 3mm. So up on the outside, down on the inside, so there's two stitches holding it in place. Then we can carry on with our rococo around the edge. So up on the outside, angle that needle in towards the leather, and off we go again. So I'll show you one more corner. Needle up on the points, thread goes away, rococo bends around that thread in the direction that you're going so it lies nice and flat. Needle goes down, and we'll put that spangle in as well while we're there. Just putting one extra stitch in here just to hold it out of the way. And you're going to come back and go just a little bit away from the corner. Thread that spangle on. 2 stitches is good for spangles because that will be enough to secure them. 1 doesn't hold because you can see they've got a little gap in them, so 1 stitch they can come off, so put at least 2 stitches in to hold them in place. Right, now I'm going to carry on with this thread, so we're going to cross over the first one that we did, so just keep it going all the way down over the top, and then put a stitch in the other side. You can see I'm not pulling on that gold thread because the tension will do strange things, so just let it lie nice and flat on its own and it will go over there nicely without straining anything. And just carry on stitching as before with 1 stitch in each of the little waves of the thread. So crossing it again, so same as before, just place the thread in position, don't pull on it, goes over the top, put a stitch the other side, now we're reaching the bottom, so I just want to show you what we do with the end. So as for the beginning, I'm not going to stitch right up to the end because we're going to take this thread through to the back of the fabric, so we want it to go through at the end of that black line. So I'm going to stitch fairly close to it. I'm actually going to finish this thread off because we're going to use a different thread to finish it on the back, so I'm just going to do my 2 small stitches on the top here. You can thread them underneath if you want to, but just for filming it's easier for me to do everything on the top, so just hiding those 2 stitches underneath back to the top, and then I can just cut that off. I'm just going to cut that to length, just leave myself an inch or so, and we'll finish that later, so just leave those on the top for now. Now I'm going to put 1 silver tail in, so I'm changing the colour of my sewn cotton again to the grey, back through the beeswax. I'm going to start my thread on the line, so I'm just putting my knot on the line away from where I'm working so it doesn't get in the way. A small stitch straight up and down, small stitch straight up and down, those are my holding stitches. I'm going to come up near the end, one side of that black line. This is the silver rococo, so you can see that wave again, but just in a different colour, so different wire wrapped around these threads. So I'm leaving my little tail end again to take through to the back, that bit's important. Leave at least an inch, the more practice you get the shorter you can leave that, but when you're just starting out leave a good inch there, 2.5 centimetres. So stitching exactly the same way as I did the gold, make sure you cover your design line. Going over the top in the same way. I'm going to go over the top of both of these gold pieces now. Over the second one. Now we're going to finish this thread right in this point where those 2 gold ones cross each other. So 1 final stitch there. I'm going to show you what to do with this thread now. So we're going to cut it to the right length, so about an inch, a little bit longer than that. And I'm going to take a large needle now, so this is a size 5 crewel needle. It's got a strong buttonhole thread in it, which I've doubled over and put both ends through the eye, so I've got this loop. So I'm going to take that large needle right down where I want that silver thread to disappear through to the back. So pull everything through, I'm holding the end of the loop, and pull the 2 loose ends through. I'll show you this again later, so don't worry if you don't get it first go. Feed the end of the thread into the loop, just the very end of it, and underneath I'm holding my fingers really tightly to that and wiggling it around in a circle, just pulling it through. Don't yank on it really tightly, just tease it through, wiggle it round to open up the hole, and it should pull through nice and gently. We'll deal with the end of that on the back later. I just want to come in and put these silver spangles in while I've got the same thread in. So you can see I've just parked it at the side of the leather here, so I'm just doing 2 stitches to work my way up to that spangle, so don't have a big long stitch on the back. And I'm going to use a slightly smaller spangle now. These are tiny ones, and these are silver plated ones. So I'm coming up on the edge of my gold one, thread on the silver one. So these are going to overlap now. So the silver will overlap the gold one. And this stitch goes right over that gold one into the middle. So it overlaps the gold, and then because we need 2 stitches, I'm going to come up on the edge of the silver, down through the middle of the silver, and there's my 2 holding stitches. So then we'll jump to the top one, so I'll just step my thread up there with a little up and down stitch, angling that needle under that gold rococo so you can't see the stitch, so angle it out, angle it back in very close by, and that will hide the stitch. We'll do 3 just to step it up there. So up on the edge of my gold spangle, thread on the silver one, needle goes down through over the gold one so it overlaps, and up on the edge of the silver, down through the middle. I'll just show you the last one. Edge of the gold spangle, overlap the edge of that, and then come up on the edge of the silver one and down into the centre. You can just finish your thread off, either weave under some stitches on the back, or you can do as I do, just do your 2 small stitches right underneath that rococo. Just finish that thread off securely so that those spangles don't fall off. And that's all of the stitching on the front done, so all we've got to do now is to finish off the ends of our threads. So I'm going to use a double thread for this, it's a bit stronger, it's on the back, doesn't really matter what colour you use. And I'm going to show you how to put the silver one. Now I'm bending that silver thread back on itself. This is upside down now, so the kite's at the bottom and the tails are at the top, and it's come up the tails and I folded it over and it's going back down the tails. This is the strongest way of doing it. So I've just started my thread underneath some of those stitches. I'm just going to sew over and over it, just picking up a little bit of that calico backing. This is when the backing comes in really useful. So just a few threads and a little bit of the calico if you want to. Don't go through to the front though. This all sits on the back now, so we're just going to tie this end off. It's very vulnerable until it's tied off. That metal can come unravelled. You can just see it starting to unravel at the end, so it's important that you finish these off or they will unravel and it will fall out on the front. So we don't want that. So do take the time just to finish these ends off. Just going to cut that knot off out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. You don't need to do a lot of it, sort of centimetre, half an inch is plenty, but do sew it securely. Over and over, pulling it down nice and tightly so that doesn't come undone. Just passing it back through the loop, just knot it to finish off, and once more under the silver rococo. Now I can cut that off. So 2 little knots there. And I can cut that excess silver thread off so that doesn't get caught up with anything, and cut my sewing thread off. So let's just show you once more how to plunge these through the top. So there's my double thread, a strong thread, a linen or a buttonhole or something that's a bit stronger. Round and round, pull it through gently so it pops through to the back. It's the final one, so I've just folded it in half, threaded it in the needle so I've got the loop past the thread, just so the end sits in the loop, so I've got something to pull through to the back. Wiggle it through. Fold these threads back on themselves so they're going back in the direction that they came in. That will help to make them extra secure. You can see I'm following the line of the stitching. Don't finish them off in space or in a different direction. Finish them off over the top of where you stitched them on the front. So a couple of stitches over and over, going underneath my threads, picking up a little bit of that backing fabric. That's far enough, so I can just finish that off. Back through the loop, that just knots it, bit of extra security. Cut that thread, cut off my gold. And those are all the ends finished on the back, nice and secure. I'm going to mount mine in a hoop. This is a flexi hoop. We do have a video on how to do this. You can see that video in the top right hand corner here. You can click the little notification there. And this is what it looks like when it's mounted. A very nice, easy way of mounting. Looks really good. You can see all the gold sparkling in the light. So I hope you've been inspired to have a go at Goldwork. If you haven't seen them yet, do check out our other videos over here on the different kinds of Goldwork threads and metals and the equipment that you'll need to get started. And don't forget that you can get all of the materials in our shop as well. And if you've liked this video, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and click the bell and you'll get notifications when we upload some more videos. Thanks for watching.